So I'm curious though, why you think it is this information hasn't already spread? Is it just that the
Because what I'm
tools?
saying has not happened. Okay, a lot of researchers are dedicated to research.
Hmm.
Okay, that's a very important step. Do the research, but they're not looking to get on television shows and media. They're back to the research, or maybe they're teaching in college, or they're hired by some kind of research organization. So I'm not in this for the money, you see. Uh, and I'm not being critical of anyone who is doing their job. They've got whatever dependents to support or whatever. That's okay. I'm in a place where I don't need to say, well, I'm going to get paid over there, so I'm going to do that. So that's a consideration for a lot of people. Okay, but hey, this doesn't have to be your full-time job. If you did this for an hour a day to connect with people, to pass on the information we're talking about, and then you connected with 100 other people to do this an hour a day, and then what do they call it? Goes viral. Let's get this information to go viral, okay, folks?
Well, I asked that because viral is a really interesting word. I know the word meme. I mean, obviously, you're assuming you're laughing because it's a very
Yeah,
interesting word in the past year. But also the word meme, which as it was coined by Richard Dawkins, describes ideas as being like viruses, and that
yeah,
certain ones
yeah.
certain ones reproduce more than others do. And there's something I was working on writing earlier this week talking about trauma as a sort of virus, meaning that it's something that gets in your system and then it hijacks the host to reproduce itself into other
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
It sounds like you would agree with that analogy or
yeah.
description of it. And so one of the things I'm curious about is why trauma seems to be such an easily spread virus through society, whereas an idea like, hey, just really deeply connect to your children and understand their needs, it seems to me that's a very positive message, yet it doesn't seem to spread as virally as practices that harm children or create trauma between people. And so I guess I'm curious is that just because the people who are researching haven't quite connected with media distribution necessary to spread the idea, or is it that there's something in the idea that makes one more viral than the other?
Well, it's not in the idea, it's how it affects us. So if we're traumatized, as I've said, we're less sensitive to our own feelings, other people's feelings, and we're very likely, if we become parents, to pass the trauma on to the next generation, repeating the cycle generation after generation. So that's the viral aspect, is repeating the cycle to the next generation. And as I mentioned previously, we're more likely to conform to things that aren't necessarily in our best interest or our children's interests, because conformity gives us the appearance of connecting to other people. We're getting approval of people if we do what they want us to do and do what they do. We need social approval to some extent, okay, to a lot of extent. And so the other part of my response is, we're resistant to change if we're traumatized. No, I'm saying we're resistant to change if we're traumatized. We're resistant to the kinds of ideas we're putting out here because, again, it conflicts with our lifelong held beliefs and values. Like, for me to say, sleep with your baby, not put your baby in another room. Somebody out there is going to believe it. That's absurd. Who would want to do that? I don't want to do that. There can't be any good reason for it. I mean, they can't get it. They're resistant to what's natural and what satisfies children's needs, and what supports the bond between the mother and the infant. That's how humans are in certain situations based on their histories.
There was something really interesting in what you said about conformity seeming like connection.
Yeah.
It almost, because there's certain viruses that they get in your system by mimicking a natural function of the body, and your body thinks, oh, this is a part of me, or this is one of my cells, when it's actually the virus. And it sounds like conformity is almost a, like, it looks like it's connection, it looks like it's the real thing when it's not. And then it sounds like also trauma itself has its own immune system and is naturally resistant to attempts of connection, of genuine connection.
Okay, yes, I want to clarify about conformity. Conformity is can happen when we're conforming to practices that are harmful, and it's also natural for us to conform when the culture is not dealing with trauma and infants are not dealing with trauma. So, for example, I'll refer to a book, The Continuum Concept.
That I read that recently, and it's my favorite parenting book I've read thus far. I love that book.
All right.
Yes.
It's a wonderful book. Very briefly, it's a woman who went to the Amazon for a particular reason, had nothing to do with what we're talking about, and then she ended up observing one of the local tribes, and was amazed at their behaviors, and in particular how they raised their children. So she just decided to return and study and live with them, study how they raise their children, and then write a book about it, The Continuum Concept. So, okay, so what I'm saying here is, in that natural environment, children learn by copying what they see others doing. So that's conformity. It's how they learn. And so parents don't necessarily have to overtly teach the children, this is how you do this particular task. What's more likely is the children just observe. They're with their parents anyway. They observe what their parents do, and then they naturally want to do it themselves. So it doesn't necessarily require a teaching effort. Of course, when the child makes an attempt to do what the parent's doing, the parent will support the child by saying, oh, make this little adjustment here, and this will help you out, and so forth and so on. It's very natural to conform when we are living our natural lives and supporting children more naturally. And when we don't get that, we tend to conform based on other perspectives and values, as I've said. And sometimes it can get us into trouble if we're going down a path of conformity that's not in our best interests.
One thing that book really made me think through is like every habit in my life, I now look at and go, oh, like when the child is here, they're going to conform. Are they going to copy this habit? Is this one I actually want them to copy? You know, do I want my children to see me scrolling on my phone for an hour? Is that a habit I want to pass on? Do I need to drop that habit? Like I'm serious. I'm going through every, single part of my life. And then at the same time, there's some where I'm like, well, I work on my computer. Maybe that's the world they're coming into, that is learning how to use the computer and do certain productive things on it is part of what they should do. But also, I don't know if I want my children spending that much screen time. It's one of those.
Don't get them a cell phone.
Don't get them a cell phone.
Hey, okay, I got a little more to say about that.
Sure.
There's research on young teenagers with cell phones, and the research generally says that the more they use their cell phones, and do all that young teenagers do with cell phones, it tends to be associated with a greater likelihood of depression. Okay, and a cell phone does not satisfy our need for social connection.
Hmm.
Okay, and to pretend that it does is going to get you down a path. It's not going to help to satisfy your needs for social connection. Oh, and another little quick anecdote. In the past, I saw 3 young women, probably teenagers, walking down a sidewalk in a fairly busy part of a small town, shoulder to shoulder. Now they're walking down so obviously they're with each other, and they're each looking at their own cell phones. No communication between them, shoulder to shoulder. That's an image I have never forgotten.
I mean, it does sound like even in that image, there's an instinctual desire for connection. They weren't walking separately. They were still, there's an unconscious going toward for that.